Hello everybody, Disciple here with Overwatch Curios. Now before we get started, I want to tell you guys really quickly about our Discord server. Now we're not sponsored by Discord at all, I just thought it'd be cool to have a place where we could have a little bit more of a community outside of just these videos, where you guys can talk about the game, give us feedback, and even more look for groups for ranked, or join us in our own custom games when we're looking to record something or test something out. So if you want to check that out, the link's in the description. And also if you want to interact with us outside of these videos, you can always hit us up on Twitter and I will always reply at Disciple Games or at Curios Community. Anyway, let's get started. So every hero in the game has a ton of voice lines for all kinds of different things like emotes, taunts, in-game actions such as ultimates, and even voiced interactions with other heroes. Now after the first round of the closed beta, Blizzard removed quite a few of the lesser used voice lines and added new ones to replace them for most of the characters. Now it's not exactly clear why Blizzard decided to remove these particular voice lines, but some reasons may include lore related changes to the heroes or the game in general, interaction between heroes in matches with certain voice lines, as well as just unpopular or unnecessary lines that were simply replaced or re-recorded. So REINHARDT's known for his valiant need to provide justice throughout the world, and he does so with his massive rocket hammer in hand, literally knocking enemies off their feet. Now at one point, REINHARDT's voice line included the phrase, "I am the hammer of justice," which to many REINHARDT players vocalized his noble persona and brought a little pride and excitement to REINHARDT players as they cleaned up the teamfight and heard his voice line along with their favorite emote. Now you can hear REINHARDT talk about his hammer during his ultimate animation, as well as the line, "When all you have is a hammer, everyone else is a nail," that he speaks sometimes when you get the final blow on an enemy. ZARYA has also had a few of her voice lines removed that circle around two of her biggest lore points. The line,
"I am the strongest woman in the world,"
was removed, and it referred directly to her weightlifting career and the world records that she set during it. The other line was,
"Never forget the fallen,"
which ties her to the Russian conflicts against the Omnics in which she participated, leaving that weightlifting career behind because of the devastation that happened to her home country. You can see memorials of those conflicts on murals adorning the walls of Volskaya Industries while playing matches there. Zarya's ties to Russia and Volskaya are even more present after watching the animated short Infiltration, where we were introduced to Sombra, where Zarya is called upon by Katya Volskaya, CEO of Volskaya Industries. We're not really sure why these voice lines were removed because her lore is still very relevant and, as far as we're concerned, not retconned. "Never trust an Omnic" and "That was for my people" are the only lines she currently has that actually refer to the Omnic crisis directly and are spoken when Zarya tries to take down a Bastion or Zenyatta. And of course, when she queues up with Zenyatta, she tells him to watch his back. A ROADHOG doesn't actually speak much as it is and tends to let JUNKRAT speak for him, but he does have some really great voice lines in the game. Two that got removed, however, are directly connected to his lore. The first line,
"You wanna scrap with me?"
is a play on words for both fighting with ROADHOG and referencing the scrap gun, his primary weapon that packs a serious punch. The second line,
"No job too big, no score too small,"
which refers to the Junker's personal creed first heard in the video A Moment in Crime special report, The Junkers. You can hear a similar scrap pun in the voice line, "Scrap 'em," when you get the final blow as a ROADHOG player. There doesn't seem to be any clear reason why these were removed, and it was likely just because they felt like they could have more impactful voice lines or ones that players just enjoyed using more. Now, one of the first hero-defining voice lines we've known about was Winston's "Primal Punch." It was first heard during the Overwatch cinematic trailer debuted at BlizzCon 2014, and it's tied into Winston's ultimate Primal Rage, in which he goes into a frenzy, drops his gun, and starts swinging his fists around, knocking enemies back and getting plenty of eliminations. Now the voice line has since been removed, which is kind of a bummer considering it was one of the first and most iconic voice lines heard in Overwatch's short history. You can get a sense of the voice line by telling the members of your team that your ultimate is ready when playing Winston, because he'll sometimes call out, "I'm ready to unleash my Primal Rage," yet he never actually references the Primal Punch ability again. Maybe they felt like it was a little bit too cheesy and that they needed to pull back from the corny comic book superhero vibe and instead give them a little bit more of a realistic feel in the Overwatch universe, since they are fighting a war after all. Now, Junkrat's no stranger to referencing explosions and silly voice lines and jokes. He's the master of bomb puns, and you can hear one in his line from Hollywood, where he says, "Something tells me this movie's gonna bomb." Now, the other pun that was removed was a general joke that could be heard on any map. Junkrat would utter, "That was the bomb," after getting a kill and pretty much made everyone roll their eyes and sigh deeply, which may or may not have been the reason it was removed, since it is just a little bit obvious. Of course, maybe that's just Junkrat's style. Many of Junkrat's voice lines tie directly into his lore of being an explosives-obsessed junker alongside ROADHOG out in Australia. Even though this one's been removed, you can still hear and see the bomb lore oozing from him at every turn, which definitely gives you a very solid feeling of his direction while you're playing him, which is something that I think the Overwatch team definitely strives for with all of their characters. Reaper's the master of ridiculously cliche voice lines in Overwatch, and there are a couple that have been removed since beta. Now, we're not sure if it's because they were just ridiculously cliche or not, but you have to admit, they were kind of bad. "Time to Reap" was one of the first lines we heard from Reaper during his part in the first Overwatch gameplay trailer, and it summed up his entire persona in those few words, painting a pretty clear picture of what kind of hero he was to play. To follow it up, "I am the Angel of Death" was also included, capitalizing on his obsession with killing everything and laughing maniacally while doing it. Both lines were removed, but there's no shortage of death-related lines coming from Reaper, so you can still hear things like "Death comes" and "Die, die, die" at key moments during a match. Now, fun fact, sometimes when Tracer lands the killing blow on a Reaper, she'll actually mockingly say, "Death comes," making fun of Reaper's level of cliche. Another voice line that's probably my favorites of Reaper is, of course, when he uses his E and probably says repositioning, but I always hear it as repositioning. Now, Soldier 76 also had a few voice lines removed. First, we got the line, "I've got you all in my sights," which was the previous line for his ultimate. The line has since been replaced with "I've got you in my sights," taking out the word "all." This one was probably removed in favor of the new one just sounding a little bit better and smoother, but it is interesting to note that they did change it and did have to re-record it, and it was a very conscious decision they made, but overall I feel like it does definitely fit just a little bit better. "Old habits die hard" was the line that Soldier would use when eliminating foes back in beta. I'm not really sure if this is a specific part of the lore that Soldier's referring to, or if he's just a fan of Mick Jagger, but he's been in several conflicts, including the Omnic Crisis and the downfall of Overwatch, where he fought the Blackwatch crew, so potentially just being in a war and killing opponents is his old habit. Now, SYMMETRA has quite a few interesting voice lines as well, ranging from directly literal to some philosophical conversation. Her voice line, "Do not believe everything you see," was removed and may reference the events in the Blizzard comic A Better World, where Symmetra comes to see the cost of her belief in a better perfect world and her devotion to the company that she works for. It may also just be a slightly more literal reference to her ability to create things out of seemingly thin air using light structured architecture. Most of her voice lines revolve around her ideals and thoughts on the perfect world she wants to create, and you can still hear a ton of talk about her work, her plans, and the order that she wishes to bring out of the chaos. It's also really important to note her very direct opposition to Lucio, since Lucio is essentially a freedom fighter fighting against the Vishkar Corporation, and I'd really love to see their interaction come to a head in the future, potentially with a comic that even more heavily focuses on Lucio and his crime-fighting DJing. But I definitely think that's a very cool part of the lore that gets overlooked a little bit. Finally, one thing that I've mentioned before on this channel, but that a lot of you guys still might not know, is that at one point, every single one of Mercy's lines was removed. Of course, they were all replaced, but Mercy's voice actor actually changed back when beta was brought down in December of 2015, and it was re-recorded with an actress that was actually from Switzerland and spoke German natively, as opposed to the previous voice actress who wasn't quite as comfortable with the native tongue. So even though the voice lines stayed the same, they were all re-recorded and added back into the game, and it was definitely jarring at the time, but after seeing the changes in person, I definitely liked them a lot. So, there are a lot of reasons Blizzard might have removed these voice lines, such as making room for others that they preferred, shifting the lore around a little bit and hoping to explore other areas, and maybe interactions with other lore-related lines in and out of games. And maybe in some cases, they just weren't very good and they decided to replace them with ones that players would like better. But I'm curious what your guys' theories are about why some of these might have been removed. And I'm curious if we also missed any that might have been removed since beta or even since launch. Anyway, as always, you can let me know down in the comments, or even better, in our Discord server that I would love to see you guys join. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and drop a like, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.